How to speak smart. You walk into the room with the answer. You know you're right. You've done the research, run the numbers, thought it through from every angle. You start to speak, and within seconds, you can feel it. Eyes glazing over, someone checking their phone, the person across from you already formulating their counterpoint before you've finished your sentence. This has happened to you more times than you can count. And here's the part that stings. Later in the same conversation, someone else says essentially the same thing you said. Suddenly, everyone's nodding, taking notes, asking follow-up questions. What changed? Not the idea, the delivery. The way you speak determines whether people take you seriously or dismiss you, not after they've seen your credentials, not after they've worked with you for months. In the first 10 seconds of opening your mouth. And most intelligent women are unknowingly using language patterns that make dismissal the easiest response. You've been taught to soften everything, to hedge, to apologize for taking up space, to frame certainty as opinion. I think maybe we could consider when what you mean is, we should do this. These patterns feel polite. They feel collaborative. They feel like good communication. They're destroying your credibility. Research from Stanford and Harvard shows something uncomfortable. Women using tentative language are perceived as less competent than men saying the exact same thing with confidence. Not because the content is weaker, because the delivery invites doubt. The smartest woman in the room is rarely the one people listen to, not because she lacks expertise. Because the way she communicates obscures it. Over the next hour and 40 minutes, that changes. You're going to learn exactly which words and patterns are costing you respect, how to structure your thoughts so people follow you from start to finish, how to eliminate hedging without sounding aggressive, how to hold your ground when someone tries to talk over you, how to make your intelligence impossible to ignore. This isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about removing the static between what you know and what people hear. You're already smart. Let's make sure you sound like it. Chapter 1. Why Smart Women Sound Uncertain. The smartest woman in the room is rarely the one people listen to. You've seen it happen. A woman with actual expertise gets talked over by a man with confidence and nothing else. You watch someone repeat your idea 10 minutes later and get credit for it. Your intelligence isn't the problem. Your delivery is. Stop overthinking your delivery. You know a lot. So when you speak, you try to capture all the nuance, all the exceptions, all the complexity. Well, it depends on context. But generally speaking, in most cases, you think you're being accurate, you're burying your point. Research from Stanford. Complex explanations make people's brains disengage, not because your information is bad, because you're making them work too hard. Meanwhile, someone with half your knowledge says, "Here's what we should do," and everyone nods. Not because his idea is better, because his delivery made it easy to process. You've been taught certainty is arrogance. You've been socialized to believe confidence makes you difficult. That hedging is collaborative. That, I think maybe we could consider, is more likable than we should do this. So you soften everything, turn statements into questions, apologize for having opinions. Frame expertise as suggestion. Every single pattern trains people to hear your words as optional. Harvard Business School. Women who use tentative language are perceived as less competent, even when delivering identical content to men using assertive language. You're not doing this because you're unsure. You're doing it because you've been punished for sounding sure. called aggressive, bossy, difficult. That padding is costing you credibility every single time you speak. Filler words are killing you. Basically, actually, kind of, sort of. You don't notice how often you use them. Everyone listening does. Every filler word tells the listener, I'm not sure what I'm about to say. I haven't prepared this thought. Wait for something better. University of Pennsylvania study. Speakers who pause are rated as more intelligent, prepared, and trustworthy than speakers who use fillers. Same content, different perception. Your brain moves faster than your mouth. You fill gaps with sound while you catch up. It feels like flow. You're broadcasting uncertainty. The fix? Pause. 1 second of silence makes you sound deliberate. And makes you sound unsure. Same gap. Opposite effect. Stop explaining, start stating. Smart women love context. You want people to understand not just what you think, but why. So you explain, provide background, walk through your reasoning. This is backwards. People don't need your reasoning to accept your point. The more you explain, the more you invite them to find holes. You're handing them reasons to disagree before you've made your case. Watch powerful communicators. They state their position first. This is what we should do. Then, only if asked, they explain. We need to shift the budget to marketing. Lands harder than I was looking at the numbers, and it seems like maybe if we consider the ROI. One sounds like a recommendation, the other sounds like you're still deciding. The cost. Every time you communicate with these patterns, you lose ground. Not dramatically, just slightly weaker impression, slightly lower assessment. These small hits accumulate. 6 months of hedging means you're not considered for promotion. A year of over-explaining means you're not the person they think of for decisions. The woman who states things clearly, even with less knowledge, becomes the trusted voice. Maya, senior engineer, watched a junior male colleague get promoted over her. He didn't know more. He spoke in declarations while she spoke in suggestions. We should consider X versus let's do X. 6 months later, he was her manager. That's the cost. Fix what you can't see. Record yourself. Count your filler words. Notice how often you turn statements into questions. Track your apologies before opinions. You're not doing this to feel bad. You can't adjust patterns you don't see. Most women are shocked when they hear themselves. I didn't realize I said like that many times. I apologized before every sentence. The gap between how you think you sound and how you actually sound is where your credibility leaks out. The truth. Nobody will tell you your communication is undermining you. They'll just stop listening as carefully, interrupt more, repeat your ideas as theirs, promote someone else. Your intelligence isn't in question. The delivery is what's costing you. Delivery is a skill, not a talent, not a personality trait, a skill you can learn and master. The women who command attention aren't more confident than you. They've just learned techniques you were never taught. In the next chapter, the vocabulary trap. Why big words make you sound less smart, not more. And how to use language that makes your intelligence impossible to miss. Chapter 2. The vocabulary trap. Big words don't make you sound smart. They make you sound insecure. You think using complex vocabulary proves you know what you're talking about. It doesn't. It proves you're trying too hard. The smartest communicators use the simplest language that captures their meaning precisely. They're not dumbing things down. They're removing obstacles between their idea and the listener's understanding. But women especially fall into this trap. You walk into rooms where people assume you're less knowledgeable, so you overcompensate with language, you reach for technical terms, you use sophisticated phrasing, you want to signal immediately that you belong. This backfires. Why complex language destroys credibility. Daniel Kahneman's research on mental effort. When people encounter difficult-to-process language, they expend cognitive resources on comprehension rather than evaluation. Translation: they're working so hard to understand what you said, they're not thinking about whether it's valuable, and they blame you, not themselves. When your communication requires effort to decode, listeners don't think, "Wow, this person is brilliant." They think, "This person can't explain things clearly." Take this sentence. We need to facilitate the optimization of our operational infrastructure to achieve enhanced productivity metrics. Now this one. We need to improve how our systems work so we produce more. Same meaning. One makes you sound like you're performing. The other makes you sound like you know what you're talking about. Einstein's principle. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. This isn't about intelligence. It's about clarity of thought. When you truly understand something, you can strip away complexity and communicate its essence. You know which parts matter and which are scaffolding. You can translate technical into accessible without losing accuracy. But when your understanding is shallow, you hide behind complex language. You use jargon as camouflage. You hope sounding sophisticated will compensate for not knowing what you're talking about. Everyone senses this. Watch genuine experts communicate. Surgeons explaining procedures to patients, scientists presenting to general audiences, engineers breaking down technical problems for non-technical stakeholders. The best ones don't simplify because they're condescending. They simplify because they respect the listener's time. They know clarity is a gift, not a compromise. The corporate trap. Corporate environments actively encourage bad language habits. People say leverage synergies instead of work together. Ideate around strategic initiatives instead of plan. Every simple concept becomes a 7-word phrase that means less. And as a woman trying to fit into these spaces, you absorb this. You match the language around you because that's what sounds professional. That's what the men in leadership use. Wrong move. MIT Media Lab research. Clear, concise language in business communication correlates more strongly with leadership perception than complex, jargon-heavy language. People who advance aren't the ones who sound the most corporate. They're the ones who cut through noise and say things people can understand and act on. Precision, bias, pretension. I'm not saying have a limited vocabulary. I'm saying use the most precise word available, not the most impressive. The data contradicts that assumption is more precise than the data doesn't support that assumption. Not because contradicts is bigger, because it's more accurate, active opposition versus passive absence. But we need to utilize our resources more efficaciously is showing off. We need to use our resources better says the same thing without making people roll their eyes. Test. If you can say it with a simpler word without losing meaning, use the simpler word. If the specific term adds clarity, use it. Your goal is to be understood, not to impress. Jargon creates distance. Every industry has jargon. Useful shorthand when everyone shares the same vocabulary. Problem when you use it outside that context. Women do this unconsciously. You're in a meeting with people who've dismissed you before, so you deploy technical language as defense. You want to establish you know what you're talking about before they question it. You're making it harder for them to engage with your idea. If you're explaining a technical issue to someone in finance, saying, "We're dealing with API latency impacting webhook reliability," means nothing. The connection between our systems is slow, making our automated processes unreliable, gives them something to understand and decide about. Fix, assume less, define more. We're seeing high churn, people canceling subscriptions, which suggests a product-market fit problem. 3 extra seconds of clarity ensures everyone stays with you. Replace weak phrases with strong words. Weak. I think maybe we should consider looking into this. Strong. We should investigate this. Weak. It seems like there might be a problem with the approach. Strong. This approach has a problem. Weak. I was wondering if we could possibly try a different strategy. Strong. Let's try a different strategy. You cut the apologetic framing. You removed hedging. You stated what you mean. The vocabulary didn't get complex, it got direct. This is what powerful women do. They eliminate words that dilute their point. They don't say "I'm thinking" when they mean "I know." They don't say "we might want to consider" when they mean "we should do." Every extra word is where your meaning leaks out. The clarity test. Before you communicate anything important, if I said this to a smart 15-year-old, would they understand it? Not because you should talk down to adults, because if a teenager can follow your explanation, you've achieved clarity. You've removed jargon. You've eliminated unnecessary complexity. Clarity is confidence. Complexity is compensation. What this looks like. Sarah, consultant, used to prepare client presentations trying to sound as professional as possible. Optimize stakeholder alignment and leverage cross-functional synergies. She thought this made her sound experienced. Really, she was trying to sound like the male consultants. Clients were polite but distant, nodded during presentations but rarely implemented recommendations. She simplified, get everyone on the same page, instead of optimize stakeholder alignment. Have teams work together better instead of leverage cross-functional synergies. Recommendations started getting implemented. Why? People could understand and remember what she proposed. Ideas weren't different. Delivery stopped getting in the way. The bottom line vocabulary isn't about big words. It's about right words. Simple when simple works. Specific when specificity matters. Direct when you mean something definite. Make your ideas accessible without making them simplistic. Communicate with precision without creating distance. Sound intelligent because your thoughts are clear, not because your words are complicated. Next chapter, structure. Because even perfect words in wrong order lose your audience. You're going to learn how to organize thoughts so people follow you from start to finish without getting lost. Chapter 3. Structure your thoughts. Before they leave your mouth, most people communicate backwards. They start talking before they know where they're going. They figure out their point while making it. They throw information at the listener and hope something sticks. This is exhausting for everyone involved. You're struggling to organize thoughts in real time. The listener is working too hard to follow a thread that keeps changing direction. By the end, nobody's sure what was actually said. This happens because you're trying to organize your thoughts and communicate them simultaneously. And as a woman, you've been taught to provide all the context. Consider everyone's perspective. Make sure nobody feels excluded. Your brain can't do both well at the same time. Structure is everything. The listener's brain needs structure to process information. Beginning, middle, end. Clear path from point A to point B. When you don't provide structure, the brain creates it and usually gets it wrong. cognitive psychology research. Listeners retain structured information at 3 times the rate of unstructured information. Same content, different organization, massively different comprehension. This is why some people explain complex topics clearly, while others make simple topics confusing. It's not intelligence, it's structure. Think about the last time someone explained something and you immediately understood. You didn't think, wow, they're smart. You thought, oh, that makes sense. That's structure working. Now think about the last time someone lost you in an explanation. You probably felt stupid for not following. But the problem wasn't your intelligence, it was their lack of structure. And as a woman, you've probably apologized for not understanding instead of recognizing the explanation was poorly organized. Answer first. Most important structural rule: lead with your conclusion. Most women do the opposite. You build up to your point, provide background, context, reasoning, and finally, if the listener hasn't interrupted, you arrive at your message. This feels polite. You don't want to seem pushy. You want to bring people along. You want them to see how you arrived at your conclusion so they'll agree. Don't. The listener doesn't need to follow your journey. They need to know where you ended up. Once they understand your conclusion, then they can evaluate your reasoning. But if you make them wait for the point, they're spending mental energy guessing where you're going instead of evaluating what you're saying. We should shift the budget to marketing, tells me your conclusion. Now I can listen to your reasoning, knowing what you're arguing for. So I was looking at the numbers, and I noticed acquisition cost has been increasing. And when I compared ROI across channels, puts me to sleep before you get to your point. Answer first, support second. The 3-part framework. Every piece in communication should follow this: point, reason, example, state what you mean, explain why it matters, illustrate with something concrete. We need to hire more customer service staff. Our response times have tripled, and we're losing customers. Last week alone, 3 high-value accounts churned after waiting 48+ hours for responses. Point, hire more staff. Reason, response times, losing customers. Example, 3 accounts last week. Clean, clear, complete. The listener knows what you want, why you want it, has concrete illustration of the problem. Most women flip this. You start with the example because it feels less confrontational. Meander through implications because you want everyone to understand the full picture. Eventually, land on something that might be a recommendation framed as suggestion. By then, the listener's planning their grocery list. Stop burying your point. Smart women especially struggle here. You want to show your work. You want people to understand all the factors you considered. You want to prove you thought this through so nobody accuses you of being impulsive or emotional. So you include everything, every consideration, every qualification, every alternative you evaluated. This isn't thoroughness. It's burying your point under information the listener doesn't need yet. Your job isn't to download your entire thought process. It's to communicate your conclusion clearly and provide enough support that people trust it. If they want more detail, they'll ask. If they disagree with your reasoning, they'll push back. Both are better outcomes than them tuning out because you overloaded them with information. Watch how men present ideas. They don't walk through every step of their thinking. They don't preemptively address every possible objection. They state their conclusion and defend it if challenged. You can do the same. You don't have to prove you deserve to have an opinion before you state it. Signpost where you're going. Powerful structural tool, the preview. Before diving into explanation, tell people what you're about to explain. Before giving 3 reasons, tell them there are 3 reasons. Before sharing a story, tell them why you're sharing it. Let me give you 3 reasons why this approach won't work. Tells the listener to expect 3 distinct points. Their brain organizes itself to receive that structure. Compare that to listing problems as you think of them. The listener doesn't know if you're done or if more is coming. They don't know which points are main ideas and which are supporting details. This is especially important for women in meetings. When you signpost your structure, people are less likely to interrupt because they know you have a plan. I have 3 points to make, and they build on each other, so let me get through all 3, create space for you to complete your thought. Without signposting, even organized information feels chaotic. And as a woman, you're more likely to get interrupted because people assume you're just thinking out loud. 1 idea per sentence. Writing principle that applies to speaking. 1 sentence contains 1 complete thought. When you pack multiple ideas into a single sentence, you force the listener to untangle them. We need to hire more staff and also change our training program. And by the way, current response times are unacceptable and our competitors are doing better. Is 4 separate thoughts crammed together. Compare. Our customer service response times are unacceptable. We need to hire more staff. We also need to change our training program. Our competitors are handling this better. 4 sentences, 4 thoughts, each one clear. Structure is obvious. Women tend to connect too many thoughts in a single sentence because you're trying to be comprehensive. You don't want to leave anything out, but you're creating comprehension barriers. The pause that creates clarity. Structure isn't just order of information, it's also spacing. When you rush from one point to the next without pause, you create a wall of words. The listener can't tell where one idea ends and another begins. Powerful speakers pause between thoughts, not awkward, endless pauses, just a beat. A moment of silence that signals that thought is complete. Here comes the next one. This does 2 things. Gives the listener a moment to process what you just said, makes you sound more deliberate, like you're choosing words carefully instead of reacting. Most women are terrified of silence. You've been taught that silence means you're not engaging, that you need to fill every gap, that pausing makes you seem uncertain. Opposite is true. A pause makes you sound thoughtful. A filler word makes you sound uncertain. Practice. When you finish a thought, stop. Full stop for 1 second. Then start your next thought. That 1 second will feel eternal to you. To the listener, it's barely noticeable, but it creates structure that makes you significantly easier to follow. Linear vacuous, spiral thinking. Some people think linearly. A leads to B leads to C. Many women think in spirals. Start with an idea, orbit around related concepts, circle back to add detail, jump to connections, eventually arrive at a conclusion incorporating everything. This is relational thinking. It's not wrong. But if you're a spiral thinker, you cannot communicate the way you think. You have to translate your spiral into a line before you speak. This is hard. Your thought process feels important. All those connections feel relevant. You want people to see how you integrated different perspectives, but the listener doesn't have access to your internal logic. When you communicate in spirals, they just get lost. When they get lost, they stop listening. When they stop listening, your brilliant conclusion gets dismissed because nobody followed you there. Before you speak, what's the straight line from starting point to conclusion? What's the most direct path? That's the structure you communicate. The spirals stay in your head. The and also trap. Watch for this pattern, making your point, then adding to it, then adding more, then adding even more. We should launch the product in Q3, and also we need to finalize the marketing plan. And also we should probably talk to legal about claims. And also I think pricing needs another review. This is 4 separate discussions disguised as one point. You're not building an argument. You're listing unrelated concerns as you think of them. Women do this because you're afraid of forgetting something. When you finally get to speak, you try to cover everything before someone cuts you off. But you're diluting your original point and confusing the conversation. Better. We should launch the product in Q3. Before we do, we need to handle 4 things. Finalize marketing, clear legal review, confirm pricing, lock down timeline. Let's prioritize which we tackle first. Now you've organized the chaos. You've given structure to what was a list of anxieties. The listener can engage with your actual proposal instead of trying to track every thought you're having. Structure is respect. When you organize thoughts before communicating them, you're showing respect for the listener's time and cognitive energy. You're saying, I've done the work of organizing this, so you don't have to. I'm giving you information in the order that makes it easiest to understand. I'm not making you excavate my point from a pile of context. Unstructured communication dumps the burden of organization on the listener. It says, here's everything in my head. You figure out what matters. Structured communication is generous. It does the hard work of clarity so the listener can focus on evaluating your idea instead of decoding your explanation. People notice this. They might not consciously think, wow, well structured. But they'll think, that made sense. I could follow that. I trust this person knows what they're talking about. For women especially, structure builds credibility because it demonstrates clear thinking. And clear thinking is what people respect, much more than being accommodating or comprehensive. Making this automatic right now, organizing thoughts before speaking, probably feels like extra work. You're used to processing verbally. You think out loud. Here's how to train yourself. Before you speak, pause and ask one question. What's my point? Not what do I want to say? That's too broad. What's my point? Forces you to identify your conclusion first. Once you know your point, the structure becomes obvious. Lead with it, then support it. That's the whole game. With practice, this becomes automatic. You stop needing to consciously structure every sentence. Your brain learns to organize before you open your mouth. But at first, you have to do it deliberately. Pay attention to communicators you find easy to follow. Notice how they structure information. They're not doing anything magical. They're just being clear about where they're going and taking you there directly. Next chapter. The words that make you sound uncertain when you're not. You're going to learn exactly which phrases are costing you credibility and what to replace them with so you sound like you mean what you say. Chapter 4. The words that destroy your credibility. There are specific phrases women use that destroy credibility instantly. You don't even notice you're saying them, but everyone listening does. These aren't verbal habits. They're trained responses, ways of speaking you learn to make yourself smaller, less threatening, more palatable, and every single one is costing you respect. Let's dismantle them. I think and I feel. I think we should change the approach. I feel like this isn't working. You're framing certainty as opinion. You know the approach needs to change. You can see it's not working, but you soften it with I think or I feel. because stating things definitively feels too aggressive. Here's what those phrases actually communicate. This is just my personal view, and I'm open to being wrong about it. Feel free to dismiss this. Men don't do this. They say, we should change the approach, or this isn't working. Same information, no hedging. People take it seriously. Stanford's Clayman Institute research. Women use tentative language in professional settings at twice the rate of men, even when they have equal or superior expertise. This tentative language directly correlates with lower perceived competence. You're not being tentative because you're uncertain. You're being tentative because you've learned that confident women get punished. So you preemptively soften everything. Stop. If you know something, state it. If you believe something based on evidence or experience, declare it. This approach isn't working is not arrogant. It's clear, save, I think, for actual opinions where reasonable people could disagree. I think we should go with the blue design is appropriate. It's preference. I think the data shows a problem is not appropriate. The data either shows a problem or it doesn't. Does that make sense? You just explained something clearly, then you immediately undercut it by asking, does that make sense? You think you're being helpful, checking for understanding, making sure people followed you. You're signaling that you're not confident in your own explanation, that maybe it didn't make sense, that the listener might be confused because you weren't clear enough. Men almost never ask this. They explain something and move on. If people are confused, they'll ask questions. The burden of comprehension is on the listener, not the speaker. When you ask, does that make sense? After every explanation, you're taking responsibility for their understanding. You're implying that if they didn't follow you, it's your failure, not their inattention. Fix. After you explain something, stop. Just stop talking. If people need clarification, they'll ask. If they nod and move on, they understood. You don't need to check. The only time, does that make sense, is appropriate, is when you genuinely think your explanation might have been unclear and you want feedback, not as a verbal tick after every statement. Just and actually. I just wanted to follow up on that email. I'm just checking in. I actually have some ideas about this. These words minimize what you're saying. Just makes your action sound small and apologetic. Actually implies surprise that you have something to contribute. You use these words to soften your presence, to make your needs seem less important, to suggest what you're doing is minor and they shouldn't be bothered by it. But your email follow-up isn't a minor inconvenience. Your check-in isn't an imposition. Your ideas aren't surprising. You're supposed to have ideas. Compare. I just wanted to follow up versus I'm following up. I actually have some ideas versus I have some ideas. I just think we should consider versus we should consider. The version without just or actually is stronger. It states what you're doing without apologizing for it. It treats your contribution as normal and expected, not surprising or burdensome. Start noticing how often you use these words, then remove them. Your sentences will feel uncomfortably direct at first. That discomfort is what confidence feels like before you're used to it. Sorry, but how many times today have you apologized for things that aren't your fault? Sorry, can I ask a question? Sorry to interrupt, but sorry, I might be wrong about this. You're apologizing for existing in the conversation, for taking up space, for having thoughts that might contradict someone else's. University of Waterloo research. Women apologize significantly more than men, often for situations where they've done nothing wrong. You apologize to smooth social interactions, show you're not threatening, preemptively deflect potential conflict. But every unnecessary apology trains people to see you as someone who should apologize, someone whose presence is an inconvenience, someone who needs permission to speak. Rule: only apologize for actual wrongdoing. If you made a mistake, apologize. If you caused harm, apologize. If you're late, forgot something, dropped the ball, apologize. But don't apologize for asking questions, for interrupting. Just interrupt. Everyone else does. For having a different opinion, for needing clarification, for doing your job. Replace "sorry, but can I add something?" or more with "I want to add something." Replace "sorry to bother you" with "do you have a minute?" Replace "sorry if this is wrong" with "nothing. Just state your point." You'll feel rude. You're not. You're just not apologizing for existing. Kind of and sort of. I'm kind of concerned about this approach. It sort of seems like we're missing something. You're not kind of concerned. You're concerned. It doesn't sort of seem like something's missing. Either something's missing or it's not. These phrases dilute your meaning. They take a clear statement and make it vague. They transform certainty into uncertainty. Women use these hedges because direct statements feel too harsh. "I'm concerned" sounds like criticism. "We're missing something" sounds like you're accusing people of oversight, so you soften it with "kind of" and "sort of" to make it palatable. But palatable is weak, and weak doesn't get heard. If you're concerned, say you're concerned. If something's missing, say something's missing. Then explain why. Your reasoning is what makes the statement credible, not the hedging. I'm concerned about this approach because the timeline doesn't account for testing, is clear and actionable. I'm kind of concerned about this approach because, it sort of seems like maybe we're not leaving enough time for testing. Sounds like you're not sure what you're talking about. Same concern, completely different impact. Is this a good time? You need to talk to someone. You walk up or send a message. Is this a good time? You think you're being respectful. You're actually giving them an easy out to dismiss you. Because the answer is almost always, not really, but what do you need? Now you're starting the conversation from a position of imposition. They're doing you a favor by listening. Men don't do this. They just start talking. "Hey, quick question about the project. Got a minute? I need your input on something." They assume their time and the other person's time are equally valuable, so the default is that conversations happen unless there's a specific reason they can't. You can do the same. Instead of asking if it's a good time, state what you need and give them a chance to defer if necessary. "I need 5 minutes to discuss the timeline. Now or after lunch?" You're not asking permission to have a need. You're coordinating when to address it. "I could be wrong, but..." Ultimate credibility killer. You're preemptively undermining your own point before you make it. "I could be wrong, but I think the numbers don't add up." "I'm not sure about this, but it seems like there's a problem." If you could be wrong, why are you speaking? If you're not sure, why should anyone listen? You use this phrase to protect yourself. If you admit upfront, you might be wrong, people can't attack you for being wrong later. You're hedging against criticism by criticizing yourself first. But you're giving people permission to ignore you. You've signaled that even you don't trust your own judgment, so why should they? When you actually are wrong, this phrase doesn't help. People remember the wrong information, not the disclaimer. When you're right, the disclaimer makes them take you less seriously, even though your point is valid. Stop using it. If you have a point to make it. If you have evidence, present it. If you have concerns, voice them without the preamble. "The numbers don't add up" is a statement people can evaluate. "I could be wrong, but I think the numbers don't add up" is a statement people can dismiss. If someone challenges you, and it turns out you're wrong, you can acknowledge it then. You're right. I missed that variable. Thanks for catching it. That's professional. Preemptively undermining yourself is not. Probably and maybe. We should probably look into this. Maybe we could try a different approach. These words drain urgency from everything you say. They turn recommendations into suggestions. They transform actions into possibilities. Women use them constantly because definitive language feels pushy. You don't want to seem demanding. You don't want to overstep. So you couch everything in probability instead of certainty. But when you say probably or maybe, you're telling people this isn't important, that it's optional, that they can ignore it if they want. We should look into this is a recommendation. We should probably look into this is a thought you had that they can take or leave. If something should be done, say it should be done. If you're not sure whether it should be done, don't bring it up until you are sure. Your job isn't to voice every half-formed thought. It's to communicate what matters. Exception, when you're genuinely uncertain and need input. I'm not sure if we should prioritize speed or accuracy here. Thoughts? That's collaborative. Maybe we should probably consider possibly prioritizing one over the other is just weak. As I said before. You made a point. Someone ignored it or talked over you. A few minutes later, you try again. As I said before. You think you're reclaiming your idea. You're actually admitting you weren't heard the first time and framing that as your failure, not theirs. As I said before, signals. I already mentioned this, but you didn't listen. So I'm going to apologetically repeat myself and draw attention to the fact that I was ignored. Don't do this. If you need to restate something, just restate it. We need to address the timeline. Lands stronger than, as I said before, we need to address the timeline. If someone else repeats your idea and gets credit for it, you have two options. Let it go and move on, or reclaim it directly. Exactly. That's why I suggested we address the timeline earlier. Not apologetic, not accusatory, just matter of fact. As I said before, makes you sound resentful and powerless. Restating confidently makes you sound like someone who knows the point is important enough to say twice. The upward inflection, not a phrase, but just as destructive, ending statements as questions. We should probably change the approach. I think this is the best solution. The deadline is next Friday. Your voice rises at the end, turning declarations into questions. You're seeking approval. You're asking if your statement is acceptable. You're inviting people to disagree before they've even processed what you said. This is called uptalk or high rising terminal. Research shows it's significantly more common in women's speech. It makes you sound uncertain even when you're stating facts. The deadline isn't next Friday as a question, it's next Friday as a fact. The deadline is next Friday. Full stop. Voice goes down, not up. Practice this physically. When you make a statement, drop your voice at the end. It will feel unnatural at first, especially if you've been doing uptalk for years. But it changes how people receive your words. A statement with downward inflection sounds confident. A statement with upward inflection sounds like you're not sure and need validation. What replacing these patterns looks like Jessica, project manager, recorded herself in meetings for a week. She was horrified. She said, "I just think," or "I feel like," before every opinion. She apologized for asking questions. She ended half her statements with upward inflection. She started replacing these patterns. Instead of, "Sorry, I just wanted to ask if maybe we could possibly consider a different timeline," She said, "We need to adjust the timeline. Here's why." Within a month, people stopped talking over her. Her recommendations started getting implemented. She got assigned to lead a major project. Nothing about her expertise changed. Nothing about her ideas changed. She just stopped undermining herself with language. The hard truth: these patterns are so deeply ingrained that removing them will feel wrong at first. You'll feel aggressive. You'll feel rude. You'll worry people won't like you. That feeling is not evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's evidence that you're breaking conditioning. You've been trained to make yourself smaller through language, and unlearning that training feels uncomfortable. Push through it, because what you're calling aggressive is what men call normal. What you're calling rude is what confident people call clear. What you're worried will make people not like you is actually what will make them respect you. You don't need to be liked, you need to be heard. Next chapter: handling interruptions, pushback, and people who try to talk over you. You're going to learn exactly how to hold your ground without escalating conflict and how to reclaim your space in conversations where others are trying to take it from you. Chapter 5: hold your ground. When they try to take your space, you're in a meeting. You start making a point. 3 sentences in, someone cuts you off. Or you finish your point, and before anyone responds, someone else jumps in with a completely different topic. Or worse, someone waits for you to finish, then restates exactly what you just said as if they thought of it, and suddenly everyone's nodding and crediting them. This isn't random. This is a pattern, and it happens to women significantly more than it happens to men. George Washington University research. Men interrupt women 33% more often than they interrupt other men. And when women are interrupted, they're less likely to successfully regain the floor. You've been taught to handle this gracefully, to not make a scene, to let it go, to pick your battles. So you smile and stay quiet, and the conversation moves on without you. Every time you do this, you're training the room that your voice is optional. Why interruptions happen? People don't interrupt you because they're rude. They interrupt because they don't perceive your speech as something they need to wait for. When someone speaks with authority, people instinctively wait for them to finish. When someone speaks tentatively, people feel comfortable jumping in because it seems like the speaker is still figuring out their point. This is why all those hedging phrases from the last chapter matter. When you say, "I just think maybe we could consider," you're signaling your thought isn't fully formed, that you're thinking out loud. That interrupting isn't disrespectful because you weren't really making a definitive point anyway. But when you say, "We need to do this, here's why," and you say it with downward inflection and no filler words, people's brains register. This is a complete thought. Wait for it to finish. The first defense against interruptions is speaking in a way that doesn't invite them. The immediate response. Someone cuts you off mid-sentence. You have about 2 seconds to respond, or you lose the floor. Most women freeze. You've been socialized not to be aggressive, not to fight for space, not to make people uncomfortable. So you stop talking and wait for a chance to jump back in. That chance rarely comes. Here's what you do instead. Keep talking. Don't stop. Don't acknowledge the interruption. Just increase your volume slightly and keep going. Which is why we need to prioritize this over the other initiative. You're not yelling. You're not being aggressive. You're simply continuing your thought as if the interruption didn't happen. This works because most interrupters aren't trying to silence you maliciously. They're just used to jumping in whenever they have a thought. When you don't yield, they usually stop because they realize they're talking over someone. If they persist, you pause, look at them, and say calmly, "I'd like to finish my point." Then you continue exactly where you left off. Not, "Sorry, I just wanted to finish." Not, "If I could just say one more thing." Just, "I'd like to finish my point." This isn't rude. This is asserting your right to complete a thought. The reclaim. Someone interrupted you and you did stop talking. Now they're making their point. You need to get back in. Don't wait for a perfect opening. Don't raise your hand and wait to be called on like you're in school. Jump back in. When they pause for breath, start talking. Before we move on, I want to finish what I was saying about the timeline. Not asking permission, not apologizing, just reclaiming the floor. If someone tries to interrupt your reclaim, use the same technique. Keep talking. You already gave up space once. Don't give it up again. This will feel aggressive. It's not. It's normal. Men do this in every single meeting and nobody calls them aggressive. When you do it, you're just matching the standard communication pattern that already exists. The credit theft. This one is infuriating. You make a point, it gets ignored. 5 minutes later, a man says the exact same thing, and everyone agrees it's brilliant. You have 3 options. Option 1, let it go. Sometimes it's not worth the energy. The idea got heard, even if you didn't get credit. If the outcome matters more than the recognition, move on. Option 2, reclaim it immediately. Exactly. That's what I suggested 5 minutes ago. Say it matter-of-factly, not defensively. You're not complaining. You're just stating a fact. Option 3, have someone else reclaim it for you. This is where allies matter. If you have someone in the room who notices these patterns, they can say, "That's a good point. Sarah said something similar earlier. Sarah, do you want to expand on that?" Stanford research. Women who advocate for themselves are often penalized, but women who have advocates are not. If you can, build relationships with people who will back you up in meetings. But if you don't have an advocate in the room, use option 2. Yes, there's a risk someone will think you're being petty. But there's a bigger risk. If you never claim your ideas, people will never associate good ideas with you. The steamroller. Some people don't just interrupt. They steamroll, they start talking and don't stop. They take up all the oxygen in the room. They don't leave space for anyone else. You can't wait for them to finish because they're not going to finish. You have to interrupt them. This is uncomfortable for women. You've been taught that interrupting is rude. But when someone is monopolizing the conversation, interrupting them is not rude. It's necessary. Wait for them to take a breath. They have to eventually. Then start talking. I want to add something here. And keep going. Don't wait for them to acknowledge you. Don't ask permission. Just take the space. If they try to talk over you, increase your volume and keep going. You're not being aggressive, you're matching their energy. And if they get defensive, "I wasn't finished," you can say calmly, "I know, but we need to hear from others too. We can come back to your point." You're not attacking them. You're managing the conversation so it's not dominated by one voice. Handling direct challenges. Sometimes the issue isn't just interruptions. It's direct challenges to your expertise or credibility. Have you actually worked with this kind of client before? Are you sure about that? Someone is questioning whether you know what you're talking about. Don't defend yourself with credentials. When you defend your expertise, you're accepting the premise that it's up for debate. Instead, answer briefly and redirect. Have you worked with this kind of client? Yes, multiple times. Now, about the strategy, you answered the question and moved on. You didn't elaborate. You didn't provide a resume. If they push, well, I've been doing this for 15 years. You don't engage with the comparison. Different contexts, different results. This is what the data shows for our situation. You're not arguing about whose experience is more valid. You're refocusing on the actual issue. And if someone keeps questioning your expertise rather than engaging with your point, call it out directly. I'm not sure if you're questioning the strategy or questioning whether I'm qualified to suggest it. If it's the strategy, let's discuss that. If it's my qualifications, we can take that offline. You're forcing them to either engage with the substance or admit they're making it personal. Most people will back off rather than admit the latter. The condescending dismissal. That's an interesting idea, but in the real world, well, that's one perspective. But what we actually need to do is, someone is patting you on the head while dismissing your contribution. Ignore the tone, address the substance. You said, in the real world, I'd like to understand what specific concerns you have about implementation. You're not calling out their condescension directly, but you're refusing to accept a vague dismissal. You're making them articulate actual objections instead of hiding behind dismissive language. If they can't articulate real concerns and fall back on, that's just not how we do things. You have your answer. They don't have a substantive objection. They just don't like change or don't like that you're the one suggesting it. The volume game? In some environments, the loudest voice wins. People literally talk over each other, and whoever refuses to yield gets the floor. This is exhausting and shouldn't be how professional communication works, but it is how some rooms operate. If you're in one of these environments, you have two choices. Match the volume or find a different room. Matching the volume doesn't mean yelling. It means being comfortable with overlapping speech. It means not stopping when someone starts talking. It means holding your ground physically and verbally. Stand up if you need to. Increase your volume. Use physical gestures that command attention. Don't smile while you do this. You're not performing friendliness, you're claiming space. And if this feels horrible and exhausting, that's valid. You might decide the environment isn't worth it. But if you're staying, you can't opt out of the volume game and expect to be heard. Building presence before you need it. The best way to avoid being interrupted is to establish yourself as someone people listen to before conflict happens. This means speaking early in meetings, even if it's just to agree with someone else's point. That's a good approach, gets your voice in the room, and establishes that you participate. It means making sure your contributions are structured and clear. People are more likely to interrupt rambling than they are to interrupt a clear, organized point. It means not apologizing, not hedging, not using the phrases from the last chapter. Every time you speak with clarity and confidence, you're training the room to take you seriously. And it means following up on your ideas. If you suggest something and nobody acts on it, bring it up again. I suggested we review the pricing model 2 weeks ago. Has anyone looked at that? You're showing that your ideas have persistence, not just that you have them. The long game. Not every interruption is worth fighting. Not every slight is worth addressing. You have to pick your battles. But here's the rule. If a pattern is happening consistently, it's worth addressing. If the same person interrupts you every single meeting, you need to handle it. If your ideas consistently get ignored until someone else restates them, you need to call that out. One-off issues, let them go. Patterns, confront them. And sometimes the right move is to leave. If you're in an environment where women are consistently talked over, where your contributions are constantly dismissed, where no amount of assertiveness changes the dynamic, that's not a you problem. That's a culture problem. You can't fix a culture alone. You can only decide whether you want to keep fighting it or find somewhere that doesn't require constant battle just to be heard. What this looks like. Priya was a senior analyst in a finance firm. In meetings, men would interrupt her constantly. She'd start to make a point, someone would cut her off, and she'd go quiet. She started using these techniques. When someone interrupted, she kept talking. When her ideas got credited to someone else, she reclaimed them. When someone mansplained her own analysis back to her, she shut it down with, "I know, that's what I just said." The first few times, people looked surprised. One guy told her she was being unnecessarily aggressive. She said calmly, "I'm finishing my sentences, that's not aggressive." Within a month, the interruptions decreased. Within 3 months, people waited for her to finish before speaking. Not because she became more likable, because she made it clear that interrupting her wasn't going to work. The bottom line: you cannot be heard if you don't hold your ground, and holding your ground will feel uncomfortable at first because you've been trained to yield space, not claim it, but the discomfort is temporary. The pattern of being dismissed is permanent unless you interrupt it. You're not being difficult. You're being clear that your voice matters, and the people who respect competence will adjust. The people who don't weren't going to listen to you anyway. Next chapter: how to read the room in real time so you know when to speak, when to hold back, and how to adjust your communication based on what's actually happening, not just what you plan to say. Chapter 6: read the room in real time. The smartest thing you can say is sometimes nothing at all. You've been in situations where you spoke up and immediately regretted it. The timing was wrong. The room wasn't ready. Your point was valid, but it landed awkwardly because you didn't read the energy correctly. Or maybe you stayed silent when you should have spoken. You had something important to say, but you waited too long and the moment passed. This isn't about your intelligence or your ideas. It's about situational awareness. The energy read. Every room has an energy. Sometimes it's open and collaborative. Sometimes it's tense and defensive. Sometimes it's rushed and impatient. Most people walk into conversations with the script in their head, what they want to say, how they want to say it, and they deliver that script regardless of what the room actually needs. This is a mistake. Before you speak, take 30 seconds to observe. What's the mood? Are people engaged or checked out? Is there conflict brewing under the surface? Is someone dominating the conversation? Are people rushing to get through this meeting? Or is there space for deeper discussion? These observations tell you how to position what you're about to say. If the room is tense, leading with criticism will escalate. If the room is impatient, a long explanation will lose people. If the room is collaborative, you can explore ideas together. If the room is hierarchical, you need to acknowledge authority before challenging anything. Women who read rooms well don't change their message. They change their delivery based on what will actually land. The power map. Every conversation has a power structure. Sometimes it's obvious. There's a clear decision maker, and everyone else is offering input. Sometimes it's subtle. Certain people's opinions carry more weight even if they don't have formal authority. You need to know who has power in the room before you speak, not because you're going to pander to them, because you're going to position your point in a way that addresses their concerns and priorities. If the CFO is worried about budget, frame your recommendation in terms of cost. If the person with influence cares about efficiency, emphasize how your idea saves time. If the decision maker values innovation, position your suggestion as forward thinking. Same idea, different framing. You're not changing what you're proposing, you're making it easier for the people with power to say yes. The timing read. There's a right time to speak and a wrong time. The same point made at different moments will have completely different impacts. Early in a meeting, people are still forming opinions. If you speak early, you help shape the direction of the conversation. Your ideas become part of the framework everyone else discusses. Late in a meeting, decisions are often already made mentally, even if they haven't been stated yet. If you wait until the end to raise a major concern, you're fighting against momentum. People have already bought into a direction, and they don't want to go back. Middle of a meeting is often the worst time to introduce something new. People are already deep in discussion. A tangent derails progress and makes you seem like you weren't paying attention. So when do you speak? If you're introducing a new idea or concern, early. If you're agreeing with or building on someone else's point, immediately after they speak. If you're raising an objection, as soon as you see the problem, not after everyone has committed. If you're summarizing or bringing clarity, when the conversation is starting to loop or get confused. Watch for natural transitions. When one topic is wrapping up and before the next starts, that's a good moment. When someone asks, "Any other thoughts?" That's an opening. When there's a pause because people are processing, that's space you can take. But if the conversation is flowing and productive and your point isn't urgent, wait. You don't need to speak just to be heard. Sometimes the most powerful move is recognizing that the room doesn't need your input right now. The resistance read. Sometimes you can feel resistance before you've even finished making your point. Body language shifts. People start looking at their phones. Someone's expression hardens. The energy changes. Most women keep pushing through their prepared statement because they don't want to seem unsure. But this is backwards. When you sense resistance, acknowledge it. I can see some concern about this approach. What's the hesitation? This does two things. First, it shows you're paying attention to the room, not just delivering a monologue. Second, it gives you information about what's actually blocking your idea so you can address it. If the resistance is about something you can address, a misunderstanding, a concern you can mitigate, do that in the moment. I think there's confusion about the timeline. Let me clarify. We're not suggesting this happens immediately. If the resistance is fundamental, they just don't agree with your premise, don't argue in circles, state your case once more clearly and then let it go. I understand that's not the direction you want to take. I still think we'll run into problems, but I'll support whatever we decide. You've made your position clear. You've given them the information they need. They're choosing not to take your advice. That's their choice to make. The mood read, people make decisions emotionally and justify them logically later. This means the mood of the decision maker matters more than the strength of your argument. If your boss is stressed, this is not the time to pitch a new initiative that requires their mental bandwidth. If someone just got bad news, they're not going to be receptive to hearing problems. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you present it when people are exhausted, frustrated, or distracted, it won't land. This doesn't mean waiting for perfect conditions. Those never come, but it means being strategic about timing. I know we're at the end of a long meeting. Can I grab 15 minutes tomorrow to walk through this proposal? Is better than rushing through something important when people are already checked out. And if you're in the middle of making a point and you realize you've lost the room, people are glazing over, checking phones, having side conversations, cut it short. I see this isn't the right time. Let's table this and revisit when we have more bandwidth. This isn't giving up. It's recognizing that continuing right now is pointless. You'll have better results bringing it up later when people can actually focus. The exit read. Sometimes the best read is knowing when to stop participating. If the conversation has devolved into repetitive arguing, extracting yourself is smart. I think we're going in circles. Let's take a break and come back to this. If your contribution isn't needed, you don't have to speak just to have spoken. Silence is powerful when it's intentional. If someone is handling the situation well, let them. You don't have to jump in just because you could. Supporting someone else's point with your silence and your attention is often more valuable than adding your voice to the pile. And if the conversation is hostile and unproductive, you can literally leave. I don't think this discussion is productive right now. I'm going to step out and we can continue when things are calmer. You're not avoiding conflict. You're refusing to participate in dysfunction. What this looks like. Lauren was a consultant who prided herself on being direct and data-driven. She walked into client meetings with presentations prepared and delivered them regardless of the room's energy. She kept losing bids. Clients said she was too rigid or not collaborative enough. She started reading rooms before launching into her pitch. Is this client anxious about the timeline? She addressed timeline first. Is this client focused on innovation? She led with the most creative elements of the proposal. Same content. Different sequencing based on what the room needed to hear first. Her close rate tripled. The bottom line communication isn't just about what you say, it's about saying the right thing at the right time to the right people in the right way. This takes practice. You won't always read the room correctly. Sometimes you'll speak when you should have waited or wait when you should have spoken. But the more you pay attention to power, to timing, to resistance, to mood, the better you'll get at knowing how to land your message. Final chapter. You're going to learn how to become someone who rarely gets challenged in the first place. Not because you're intimidating, but because your communication is so precise, so confident, and so grounded that people instinctively take you seriously. Chapter 7. The leverage. Win with less effort. Success isn't about working harder. It's about finding leverage. Leverage means using minimal input to create maximum output. It's the difference between pushing a boulder uphill and positioning it at the top and letting gravity do the work. Strategic women don't try to do everything themselves. They find ways to multiply their impact without multiplying their effort. MIT research found that high performers spend 60% of their time on high-leverage activities that generate disproportionate results. Yet women report 42% more guilt about delegating or declining requests, often defaulting to hustle harder instead of leverage smarter. First, identify where your leverage points exist. What activities create 80% of your results? Those are your high leverage activities. Everything else is noise. The women who move forward protect this time fiercely. They don't let meetings consume the hours that actually move them forward. They batch low-value tasks. They delegate what can be delegated. They eliminate what doesn't need to be done. But leverage isn't just about time management. It's about strategic positioning. Relationship leverage. One strategic connection can open doors that would take years to open on your own. One recommendation from the right person can completely change your trajectory. The women who build careers fast invest in relationships systematically, not randomly, not transactionally, with intention. They build real connections with people doing interesting work, solving important problems, or positioned in ways that create mutual benefit. And they give first. They help without expecting immediate return. They add value to other people's lives and work. They build trust over time. Why? Because leverage through relationships only works when the relationships are genuine. Stanford research found that 85% of professional opportunities come through relationships rather than job postings, with strategic relationship building correlating with 3.2x faster career progression. Yet women spend 38% less time on strategic networking than men, often viewing it as using people. Example, you're breaking into a new industry. You could spend years building credibility from scratch, or you leverage relationships. You identify 3 people already established who you can genuinely help with your current expertise. You offer value first. 6 months later, when you're ready to make your move, you have advocates who vouch for you, introduce you to key players, and shortcut your credibility building by years. Skill, leverage. Developing one high-value skill can increase your earning potential more than years of general experience. Ask, what's the one skill that would make everything else easier? What's rare enough to be valuable but learnable enough to master? Once you identify it, focus there. Invest in becoming truly excellent instead of spreading yourself thin. Example, you're a marketing manager, good at many things: social media, campaigns, analytics, project management. Non-strategic, you continue being generally good at all of them. You're replaceable. Strategic, you identify that strategic positioning is the highest leverage skill in your field. You invest heavily in mastering it. Within 18 months, you're not just another manager. You're the positioning expert. Companies seek you out. Your earning potential doubles because you're now rare and valuable. Reputation. Leverage. A strong reputation attracts opportunities without you chasing them. People seek you out. They want to work with you. They recommend you. Georgetown research found that individuals with strong reputations receive 4.7x more unsolicited opportunities and command 34% higher compensation than equally qualified peers. Reputation compounds at approximately 15% annually when consistently maintained. Example, you're known for delivering exceptional work on deadline every single time. That reputation creates leverage. When high-stakes projects come up, you're the first person leadership thinks of. When you start your own business, clients come to you based on your reputation before you even launch. You didn't have to hustle for those opportunities. Your reputation created them. Systems leverage. Any task you do more than twice should become a system. Why? Because systems scale. Your time doesn't. Women who operate strategically document processes. They create templates. They build frameworks. They automate repetitive work. Every hour you spend building a system is an investment that pays dividends forever. Example, you send similar emails multiple times a week. Proposals, follow-ups, introductions. Non-strategic, you write each one from scratch. Each takes 15-20 minutes. That's hours per week. Strategic, you create templates for each type. Now each takes 3-5 minutes. You bought yourself back 5+ hours per week. Multiply that across all your repetitive tasks. That's systems leverage. The power of no. Every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else, usually to the high leverage activities that would actually move you forward. Women who protect their strategic priorities say no ruthlessly to opportunities that don't align with their goals, to requests that drain without returning value. This doesn't make you selfish. It makes you effective. Princeton research found that professionals who decline 40–50% of incoming requests report 2.3x higher achievement of primary goals and 41% less burnout than those who maintain a yes default. Yet women say yes to 23% more requests than men in identical roles. Saying no is a complete sentence. You don't owe everyone an explanation. Example: a colleague asks you to join a committee that meets weekly with no direct impact on your strategic goals. Non-strategic: sure, I can make that work. You just committed 100+ hours this year to something that doesn't move you forward. Strategic: I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm not able to take on additional commitments right now. Boundary set, time protected, no guilt. That no just gave you back 100+ hours for high leverage activities. Positioning, leverage. The same skills that are common in one industry might be rare and highly valued in another. Women who win don't just try to be better, they position themselves where being different is the advantage. They ask, where is my unique combination of skills most valuable? Where is there the least competition for what I offer? Where can I create the most impact with my specific expertise? The compounding effect. Small strategic advantages build on each other over time. Learning compounds. Each new skill builds on previous ones. Relationships compound. Each connection can lead to multiple others. Results compound. Each success makes the next success easier. Wharton research found that compounding advantages account for 73% of the variation in outcomes between similarly capable professionals over 10+ year periods. Small leverage decisions made consistently create exponential rather than linear growth. This is why thinking long-term matters. The real payoff isn't next week or next month. It's next year, next decade, when all those small strategic moves have compounded into massive advantages. Focus as leverage. Most people diffuse their energy across too many things. They're working on 5 goals simultaneously and making minimal progress on all of them. Strategic women concentrate effort on 1 or 2 priorities at a time. This creates momentum. This creates breakthrough results. Diffused effort creates exhaustion. Focused effort creates leverage. Here's what changes when you master leverage. You stop feeling like you have to do everything yourself. You build systems, relationships, and skills that multiply your impact. You stop equating hours worked with value created. You start measuring results, not effort. You stop burning out trying to keep up. You start pulling ahead by working strategically instead of just working hard. And you achieve more while doing less. Leverage is how you win without burning out. It's how you achieve exponential results from incremental effort. The women who win don't work harder than everyone else. They work smarter by finding and using leverage everywhere it exists. Now, you know how to do the same. Chapter 8. The execution. Turn strategy into reality. Strategy without execution is just a beautiful plan that never happens. You can think strategically, see the big picture, anticipate obstacles, perfect your timing, find your leverage, all of it. But if you don't execute, none of it matters. This is where most people fall apart. They have great intentions, clear goals, solid plans, and then life happens and the plan sits in a notebook while they stay exactly where they are. Harvard Business School research found that only 8% of people who set goals actually achieve them, with the primary failure point being implementation rather than planning quality. Women face a unique trap. 47% report over-planning and under-executing due to perfectionism compared to 23% of men. The gap between strategy and execution isn't about willpower. It's about systems. Systems turn your intentions into automatic actions. They remove the need to rely on motivation or discipline. They make doing the right thing the path of least resistance. Break strategy into concrete actions. Vague goals don't get done, specific tasks do. Instead of build my network, it's reach out to 3 people in my target industry every Tuesday at 9 a.m. with specific value to offer them. Instead of get healthier, it's strength train Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m. for 45 minutes. Instead of grow my business, it's create and post 1 piece of content every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. and have 5 sales conversations every week scheduled in my calendar. When you know exactly what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, and what success looks like, execution becomes straightforward. Yale research found that people who specified when, where, and how they would execute their goals were 2.886 more likely to follow through. The specificity eliminates decision fatigue and creates automatic triggers. Example, you want to transition into consulting within 18 months. If you just say, I'll work on my consulting business when I have time, 3 months later, you'll have done nothing. But if you schedule it like this, every Sunday at 4 p.m., plan next week's 3 strategic priorities and block time for them. Every Tuesday, 7 a.m., create 1 piece of thought leadership content before your day job starts. Every Thursday, 12 to 1 p.m., lunch meetings with potential clients or referral partners already blocked in calendar. Every Saturday, 9 to 11 a.m., work on 1 case study, portfolio piece, or client deliverable. 3 months later, you have 12 pieces of content published, 36 strategic conversations completed, and 3 case studies demonstrating results. You're not hoping to transition. You're actively building the foundation that makes it inevitable. Treat strategic activities like appointments. They're not things you'll get to if you have time. They're commitments that everything else works around. What gets scheduled gets done. What stays on a wish list stays a wish. Microsoft research found that scheduled tasks have an 87% completion rate versus 34% for unscheduled intentions. Time blocking creates psychological commitment and eliminates decision fatigue. Build in accountability. Self-accountability sounds good, but rarely holds up under pressure. External accountability changes everything. Share your goals with someone who will actually hold you to them. Create public accountability. Hire a coach. Join a group. Find a partner working on similar goals. American Society of Training and Development research found that people who commit to someone else have a 95% success rate versus 42% when only self-accountable. Track progress. You can't improve what you don't measure. Whatever your strategic priority is, create a simple way to track it. A spreadsheet, a journal, an app, something that shows you whether you're actually following through. University of Pennsylvania, research found that people who track their progress daily are 3.5x more likely to achieve their goals than those who don't track at all. The visibility creates both accountability and positive reinforcement. Example, your strategic priority is building relationships with 50 senior leaders in your industry within 6 months. Simple spreadsheet, 3 columns, name, date of conversation, follow-up action. Every week, you review it. How many conversations did you have? Are you on pace? Who needs follow-up? The tracking keeps you honest. It shows you patterns. That's actionable data. Build habits. The solution to consistency isn't more willpower, it's habits. Attach new behaviors to existing routines. After my morning coffee, I review my strategic priorities for the day. Before I leave work, I identify my 3 key tasks for tomorrow. Every Sunday evening, I plan my week. These habit stacks make execution automatic. Duke University research found that 40% of daily actions are habits, not conscious decisions. Strategic habit stacking can increase follow-through by 64%. When you fall off track. Missing a day doesn't mean you failed, it means you're human. The difference between people who succeed and people who don't isn't perfection. It's getting back on track quickly after falling off. Women who achieve their goals expect setbacks. They plan for them. They don't let one missed workout become a month of no workouts. They treat setbacks as data, not failure. What caused the slip? What can I adjust to make this easier to sustain? Northwestern University research found that individuals who view setbacks as information rather than failure recover 4.2x faster and maintain 68% higher long-term adherence. The mindset shift from "I failed" to "What can I learn from this?" is the difference between quitting and succeeding. Stay flexible. Your strategy should be clear, but your tactics should adapt to reality. Life changes, circumstances shift. What worked last month might not work this month. The women who keep executing adjust their systems to match their reality instead of trying to force themselves into systems that no longer fit. If 6 a.m. workouts aren't happening anymore because your schedule changed, move them to lunchtime. If weekly networking calls feel like a drain, shift to monthly coffee meetings. If your planning system isn't working, try a different one. The goal isn't to stick with a specific system forever. The goal is to keep executing toward your strategy using whatever system actually works. Celebrate every win. Most women are terrible at this. They move the goalpost as soon as they achieve something. Stop doing that. Every step forward deserves acknowledgement, not just the big wins, the small ones too. Why? Because acknowledgement reinforces behavior. It makes you want to keep going. It builds momentum. This isn't about being self-congratulatory. It's about building the internal evidence that you are someone who does what they say they'll do. Here's what happens when you master execution. You stop being the woman with great ideas and become the woman who makes things happen. Your confidence grows. Not from hope or wishful thinking, from evidence. You've proven to yourself repeatedly that you can execute, and the results compound. Every executed strategy builds momentum for the next one. Every achieved goal makes the next goal more attainable. This is how the women who win create the lives they want. Not through wishful thinking, through strategic thinking combined with relentless execution. They see what they want clearly. They reverse engineer the path. They gather strategic intelligence. They understand the systems at play. They anticipate obstacles. They time their moves precisely. They leverage everything available, and then they execute consistently until the goal becomes reality. You've learned all of it now. How to pause before reacting. How to reverse engineer your endgame. How to gather information like a strategist. How to see systems instead of just situations. How to anticipate what's coming. How to time your moves for maximum impact. How to find and use leverage. And how to execute consistently through systems, not willpower. Strategy gets you pointed in the right direction, but execution is what gets you there. Now you have both. You're no longer the woman who reacts to whatever happens. You're the woman who shapes what happens next. You're no longer hoping things work out. You're engineering them to. You're no longer playing blind. You're seeing the whole board and playing several moves ahead. This is strategic thinking. All of it. Working together. And it changes everything about how you navigate your career, your relationships, your decisions, your entire life. This is your strategic edge. And now you know exactly how to use it.